and keeping it unnatural. Vibe coding. I know I bring this up every week.
Professional.
I'm a professional.
Here we wanted a Bitcoin show, and we wanted to have
It's a vibe
coding,
coding
but it
show.
turns out
Well, yeah, I think I even wrote a thing, I don't know, 6 or 9 months ago, like, let AI be AI, let Bitcoin be Bitcoin, and let them converge when they converge. And I was kind of just like, peace, you don't have to like jam these things into each other. But now everywhere I look, I'm like, okay, you can make things, and then you get stuck if you want to do payments. You get stuck if you want to do like identity stuff, right? Because there's not good ways to do that. So Max told me, I don't know if you saw this, but I guess Karpathy just dropped a tweet last night or so.
Yeah, so it was very interesting to me. So Karpathy, very popular around the Bay Area, longtime AI engineer.
He's the origination of the term vibe coding.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he was the one who made it. Like he wrote a tweet about it, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago.
So apparently a mimetic master as well.
Yeah.
But basically he dropped a tweet last night, which it's very interesting because he was like, look, vibe coding, it's great, but like, it's much harder to like, if you want to just do like a cool demo, it's like one shot, that's super easy. But if you actually want something that actually works, that people can use, that you could make money from, that people could actually log into, it's a giant pain in the ass. And the biggest pain in the ass is like, you have all of these different components that it's not easy to plug things together yet. So I need a database, I need authentication. He made a long list of like 10 to 12 things that he wanted to see in there. And interestingly, 2 of them really boil down to identity and payments. And so his whole point was, look, you have all of these beautiful pieces. You have the models to do all of the vibe coding. If someone were to step forward and build an environment where you could just plug and play with the different elements, like, hey, I need to add to this an identity system. Here's like 5 like OAuth type things that just work, or payments that just work. Amazing. In response to that tweet, Amjad, who is obviously the CEO and founder of Replit, also, interestingly, a longtime well-known Bitcoiner, he came back with a response and was like, yo, Replit agents got you. We do all of these things, except he left out 2. One was identity, and he said auth coming soon, and then he just completely ignored payments. And so I sort of tongue-in-cheek just retweeted that right now, tagged you guys, my homie Jordy, who's working on the L42 protocol, roast beef, some other guys that are working on this in the Nostr land. But like, I think the big opportunity that is clearly staring people in the face is if there's a way to like build the environment, and maybe this is something like Goose or something like Cursor or whatever, but where people can just plug and play the modules they need. Obviously, there's always going to be room for things like using X or Google or whatever for auth and traditional Stripe payments. But there's also, I think, a huge area of opportunity for the open version of that right now, which is what you were pumping yesterday on Nostr.
The open version of?
Well, the open version of like, I want to build a code, like I need a coding environment where I want to ship apps, and I want the option for that identity to be an open version of identity that's not controlled and potentially rate limited by X, and payments that's also open that anyone anywhere in the world could use. It's not controlled by whatever Stripe or something like that. That allows for things like micropayments. And it was interesting because there was a lot of Nostr people who I don't think had really played with vibe coding yet. I think that was good that you pushed that on our show yesterday. Carnage, who's a designer first and foremost, he came up and said,
perfect example, yeah.
Yeah, he basically was like, I have been vibe coding, but I still can't get all the little elements to work. Like the Nostr development kit's not quite there. I can't get identity and payments quite to work. So it seems like we're just at the precipice of that being a big deal.
And I think part of the thing we were doing here, like with D++ and stuff, is we were trying to figure out how do you help, like if we're going to do this hackathon in May, which we are, we're going to do this hackathon in May.
That's right.
When we do this hackathon in May, we've got to make it easy for people to like not care about payments and just care about the app they want to build and then drop payments in. And right now you can't do that. Like it's impossible. You have to hack your way through and figure out how to do it. So all of the hate that vibe coding gets, and I understand like people are like, oh, it's like a toy. It doesn't really replace, like that's fine, peace. But it does do some really amazing things, but it's not easy to get Lightning done fast. So I think we need to get that solved. But I also realize part of what I think is maybe holding Nostr back in some ways is that everybody's building social media apps and we don't have people just like inventing the things that they want. So I was talking about that and the guy came back and he's like, I'm working on like I think a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tracker app or something. Though there's like a billion of those ideas out there.
And how is he using either Bitcoin or Nostr?
I think he's using like Nostr to. I didn't dig into the details. I just saw it go by.
There was another group, I'm forgetting the name, but a couple of years ago they wanted to build like an activity or exercise app where you got like Bitcoin was integrated. And it took them years to build. Yeah. I don't know if they ever reached the experience they wanted to, but it just sort of speaks to the early days of how poor the dev UX is,
yeah,
but it's rapidly getting better. Combining that with AI is super exciting. Another exciting example from a couple nights ago. Miles Suter, who works with me at
Oh, yeah.
Block, he kind of reminded me of David. He's like, I mean, he's a PM as well, and like, well, I think he's a philosophy major. So he's not computer science like DK.
Very out there too.
Miles, yeah, love Miles. But he was vibe coding, and in under 1 hour, he prompted it to like he wanted a mobile app that looked like Cash App, integrated BDK and LDK and payments, and he made a testnet payment.
It worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How did he do that?
I don't know.
Was he which tools? I want
Let's
to
go
hear more about
I think it's lovable. I think it was Lovable.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Lovable is actually, I think, the one that Carnage used for his projects. He got something up really quickly too.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just front end. There's no back end.
I saw a little bit of his prompts, but
Yeah.
I didn't see all of them, so I don't know the exact sequence. But
Yep.
that's super encouraging. David, you just mentioned hackathon. I don't know if we've talked about it on the show yet, but I mean, it's still early
Oh, we didn't
formation.
talk about it?
I
I
don't,
thought- okay.
well, after the show, our next meeting is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about the hackathon, and we have a bunch of really amazing people that are going to join that meeting. We're still just figuring out the details, but we're all committed to it and excited about it. But yeah, like what are we hoping for? I think we already have a number of tool makers who want to come because they also see what we're talking about and what we're seeing, and they want to learn like they're maybe like 90% of the way there to delivering the tools needed for AI to build things for people. They want to discover the last 10%. I think this hackathon can be a great way to discover that. I guess I'm not expecting the hackathon to be perfect. Like the outcome is like everything's built and everything's perfect, but we'll learn a ton. There'll be some cool stuff created there. And we'll have like each of these tools teams, and there's going to probably be 3-4 different companies and tools vendors there are going to take some homework with them. And then over the coming weeks and months, improve their tools so that let's do another hackathon later in the year, and the tools will be really shining.
But to make the hackathon successful, so everybody comes and feels good about it, that like you can get, like we do a lot of pre-work with what kinds of tools can be integrated in what ways, so that people who come and don't have to think too much about Lightning, they can launch a game or some little app, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu app or whatever they have in mind, and they can have like some sort of Lightning payment, something at least the basics of it in, even if they can't do the more sophisticated, then we can sort of improve the tools and improve the, how much you can do with the app.
Both. We're going to get learnings on both ends.
Yeah.
To me, the most beautiful thing about the hackathon right now, besides hopefully just, as we always say, building the bridge between Silicon Valley and Bitcoin, because that's like, man, when that happens, like I am bullish, but it's a forcing function. Like the fact that we're so close, the fact that Carnage can almost get things done, but he's like, well, we need a little bit more training with the NDK things. Honestly, that's probably the kind of deal where if Pablo and Carnage sat down together for like an hour, he could have that fixed. I mean, I don't know, but within a week or something. So if this is the forcing function where, the companies that we're working with that are providing, their APIs or whatever, if it's like, well, you only need to make whatever, these like 3 or 4 modifications so that someone can vibe code with your API or your SDK. I mean, that's probably the difference between like having Bitcoin payments go mainstream and not, at least in the next couple months.
So what kind of developers do you guys want to show up? I mean, we're going to have organizers who are enthusiastic about it like us and some other folks. We're going to have tool vendors there, but what kind of engineers do we want there? Or not, I shouldn't just say engineers, people, builders, PMs, designers, engineers, whoever thinks of themselves or wants to think of themselves as a builder. Who do we want here?
I think some of it is like, do we want to create a little bit of like tracks or vertical or specific focus? And I guess that's part of like the meeting we'll have like in an hour or whatever.
Right.
But like
trying to finish that meeting.
You have a question? Let's just watch people chat, which is a new thing we're doing.
Right. Well, I mean, I am very drawn to games because it's just such an open space of creativity, and they can be very simple and they can be like more sophisticated. So it doesn't, you can accomplish something end to end, kind of a closed system end to end, and you can drop payments in it and like present it to the world, and it's great. You don't need to like go run off and find customers and sort of build something sort of more traditionally. So I'm really leaning towards kind of game developers or people who love playing games, who have ideas in games. That keeps it fun and light. And if things break, you don't worry about it with games. If you're moving money and trying to do serious stuff, maybe you worry about it more. So I would sort of be an advocate of like, let's make it like a Bitcoin game jam, like vibe coding game jam or something. But certainly open if people have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu app or some other thing like that. I think creativity should flourish. We shouldn't have too much. But like, I don't know if we want to start having specific tracks where we try to sort of recognize people who want to do certain types of things. But I think it's more open call than.
We'll want to come up with like prize categories or
Yeah.
something. And then that's another thing. We have traction with like there's a bunch of companies who are willing to put up money for
Yep.
sponsoring prizes.
Including through my fund HiveMind. I'm very excited to do this. I see, two tracks that I'm personally very excited about. One track that I would say includes, like, I think the Indie Game Jam, I think Indie Games is a great example. But I like one general track is like vibe coding, where you add either or, and ideally and lightning payments and Nostr identity in there. So, that could be a game where it's like, and the good news here is like, I think there's a window of time. So I think it's awesome we're doing this now, where there is not a standard on identity for vibe coding. There is not a standard on payments. So like if we get, 1,000 really cool, interesting long tail apps and games that are published, and you can use Bitcoin payments in this, dope. Oh, I can just log in with Nostr. Boom. We have a chance to kind of get that early network effect before, more centralized players do. So anyway, so I think that's really interesting. And so vibe coding, but like in all kinds of areas, like I would love, I have a bunch of ideas, but hell, maybe I'll try and do this, with like taking the Stemster project and revamping that. So you have more people that are making music that can share and have split Zap payments. Cause that's something they never actually integrated, where, I can, Steve makes me a beat, which would be dope. I get out there, I rap, which I did yesterday on Nostr News. So a little bit of freestyle, but like, yeah. And so then, if I contribute the rap on top of that beat, and we can have easy, split payments in there. There's tons of ideas like that. I think, you could even have, I don't know, creative, someone builds an engine to make music and songs, that you have a marketplace around that where people can get paid for that. So I think vibe coding with Nostr and Lightning is one area. The second area, maybe the area that I'm even more excited about, is in thinking about what can we do newly on Bitcoin and Nostr that can't be done anywhere else, is the topic we discussed last week, which is my other, besides solar, major obsession right now, autonomous life. Yeah. I cannot stop thinking about this. And I think this might be, frankly, the biggest idea that I've stumbled upon, and maybe the like scariest, but also the coolest, whatever.
And I feel like there's been a lot of our discussions in the hallways, like with Bob and with Max Fang and Artur, Artur virtually, but but in the hallways, we've had this topic keeps coming up, and everybody's kind of got a little piece of the puzzle, and it feels like we just need to kind of figure out what are the roadblocks and how do you get it all together.
One of my personal goals coming out of this hackathon is, can we have examples of autonomous or very close to autonomous agents conducting commerce with one another? And this relies on Nostr potentially for the identity, Bitcoin for the payments, and secure enclaves and confidential compute for the actual brains of the operation. But my hope is, and without doxing who it is or what it is, we have at least one entrepreneur hacker we work with who thinks he can have a demo ready before the hackathon, which is sick.
Is this somebody I know?
Somebody we were all in an email.
Okay.
So yeah,
I need to check my email. Okay.
But he may not click reply on that. But the point is, if we can have that live, and then have the payment infrastructure from, companies like, Jordy's company, thank you, a few Bitcoin, right?
Max's homie.
Exactly. I know my brain's a little tired. Some of the stuff that Alexi's doing, Albie's doing, like there's all these things you can do once you have autonomous agents page. So that's the track I'm probably most excited about.
Yeah. And I think we gotta, like, I felt like last week before the show, I felt like, okay, you got to squint a lot at sci-fi. Then during the show, I feel like all the pieces are kind of there, but I don't really have a list of what are the roadblocks. Like we talked about, do you need to be able to verify what open source software is running if you want, say, an autonomous life to run an eCash mint or something?
Yeah.
Like, do we have a list of those, or can we make a list of those so we are all on the same page about?
Well, it's also why I like the hackathon is a forcing function, as Max said, and also having a prize category that focuses on, or that's one of the focuses.
I'm trying to give Max some, use that energy to PM this into existence.
I am working on an essay on it.
Essay's a good starting. And then kind of last thing on the vibe coding, I can't promise it's the last, but the other thing I want to mention, did you see the Amjad tweet about
Amjad's getting a lot of love.
Well, he's very involved in a lot of relevant stuff.
Yeah.
He sort of was commenting on how he had spent most of his real professional career and kind of his entrepreneurial journey, which I don't know, it's been 6 or 8 years, been,
like 8 to 10.
8 to 10 years.
Academy.
Yeah, right. Code Academy. Yeah. So it's like over a decade of like him focused on trying to help more people learn to code. And he's like, this is what I've spent my whole career on. And he's like, I'm kind of in team vibe code. Like maybe you shouldn't learn to code and you should learn to use these new tools instead. And I think that's kind of a big thing coming from him because he's kind of probably like the most public, has the most time invested. His personal reputation, identity, company, everything is sort of created around this other thing. And he's saying like, look, guys, I see the future and it's not that. Let's go. I think that's a big, strong signal because I hear a lot of people who are like not as connected. They're like very skeptical of vibe coding. It's like, it's not real software. It has all these problems. I was on a thread this morning where I chimed in. It was was it Rob from Anchor Watch? Rob and NVK and sort of like talking about how kind of crappy it is in a sense, which like, you know, is true. But then I was like, well, here, try these cursor rules. And it's like ways to think about refactoring and not launching new code. And like the more that you can compound your experience using these tools, the better they become for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about expectations and timelines.
Yeah.
So if given so much hype, if you've not used this yet, or you try it once after hearing all this hype, if you expect it to like write flight aviation software and operating systems with no bugs in an hour of vibe coding from a non-engineer, that's a misset expectation. But there's a lot of different categories, and I think some are already being won over now, and some will be won over soon, and then others might take 10 or 20 years. Like something that you brought up before, David, is disposable software. Like you build an application for one-time use or one-time user, and for that type of application, tech debt and like worrying about all the edge cases, you don't really care as long as it gets the immediate job done, because the only purpose is that one job. And anyone who's done software development knows that like developing a proof of concept is relatively easy. Like a hackathon, you can build something pretty cool quickly, but 90+% of the work is all the details to actually get production. Work in every phone operating system version and Android version and like
all the
hardware
cases
version and like
boring stuff.
it's so boring, but it's like takes up most of the time. But for disposable software, then that's probably not needed. So, and who cares about tech debt?
Yeah.
So for that's a category that seems completely reasonable to do now. And if 100 or 1,000 times more people can build an application like that for their lives, that's probably going to happen. Whereas doing so Lightning Development Kit is software that my team works on, and I don't see AI replacing that work today or this year or even in the coming years. It's moving money, and it's very low-level systems engineering and low-level protocol work. Where I think AI tools will help on a project like that is to discover bugs and help with like improving testing and fuzz